Hello and welcome to Smart Hearing Solutions Hearing Aid Tutorials. Today we're going to be discussing how to change the tubing on a classic BTE hard acrylic mould. On the screen here we have a behind the ear model hearing aid, the hearing aid itself which sits on top and behind the ear, the tubing that connects the hearing aid to the mould that sits inside the ear. This particular type of mould is custom made from an impression. The tubing here requires changing roughly every 12 months or sooner depending on how often the hearing aid is used. So the tubing does connect to the hearing aid at this component here, which is the hook. The tubing generally can be twisted and leveraged off like so. At times the tubing does become very hard and brittle, and despite the force generally is difficult to remove. If that's the case, you can use a Stanley knife and just make a very small incision just in top of the tubing, which will break the seal. So to change the tubing, we remove the tubing from the hearing aid itself. Alright, so we've got the tubing here that runs parallel and all the way through the mould in most cases to the part that sits inside the ear canal. As you can see right near my thumbnail, the tubing is right at that point there, and that's generally where glue is placed to secure the tubing inside the mould. In most cases it does help and assist just to use a Stanley knife and just run round the edges in between the tubing and the mould. That just breaks the glue and will help and assist us pull the tubing out on the other side. So we grab this component here, holding firmly, and the tubing slides out like so. Keep this tubing to measure your new tubing from if you don't have the client with you. So new tubing comes in this form here, which is generally much longer than what most clients need. So there is a particular angle and bend to the tubing. We want to ensure that this part of the tubing attaches to the hearing aid. You can see you've got that notch on that particular point there, and this bend helps us come out and around the ear, up the side of the face to the top of the ear where the hearing aid sits. So first step is we need to cut this particular tubing on a 45-degree angle running up like that, which will help us insert into the mould. Different clinicians like to use a Stanley knife or scissors. I prefer a sharp set of scissors, generally does the trick. So we run up like so, and we are left with a thin piece there. All this does is help us slide the tubing through the mould. As you can see, that's starting to go in there. Depending on how bendy the ear canal is, you might need to give it a bit of a twist. And as you can see, we've got the tubing starting to come out the canal end of the hearing aid mould. So I'll flip that round to view easily. And as you can see, I'm pulling that through like so. And what we want to ensure is this particular angle of the tubing is upright. Alright, so it follows the particular notch there of the mould, which is a good guide where my finger is. So to cut the tubing this particular end to length, I generally just pull the tubing through a millimetre or two further than what I require. I then cut the tubing with a very small amount left on the end, so a millimetre or two, which you can see that poking up there. I then use glue, just a very small part of Loctite, just on the edge there. And then from behind, again, I just pull the tubing through very slowly. What you want to ensure is there's no part of that tubing that sticks out the end of the mould, so it's all nice and smooth. And we're just ensuring the angle lines up with that notch in the mould there, which ensures it's running up the side of the face on the right angle. Now, traditionally, the mould is placed into the ear once the glue is completely dry. The hearing aid's placed on top of the ear and we measure and cut the tubing to length. As mentioned, if you're doing this off-site or the client's not with you. If the client isn't with you, we can use the old tubing as a guide. So what we do is we match up the corner bend there, bring along and cut the tubing to length. Always best to go longer rather than shorter if you are unsure, because you can always trim some more. And we reattach to the hook, which does require a firm press like so. Thanks for listening.